We live in a world that we want to be as comfortable as we can. And we wonder why we have no growth. We wonder why when the smallest thing in our life gets difficult, we wonder why we cower. We don't want to suffer. We don't want to feel discomfort. So the whole time we're living our lives in a very comfortable area. There's no growth in that. So for me, I realized that. The reason I became 297 pounds is because that was comfortable. What was very uncomfortable was running. And I also realized when I was really big, I had no growth. Why? Because I was living comfortable. So I realized for me to find growth, I had to face all these different things that made me very, very uncomfortable. One thing I faced was running. I absolutely hated running. How you gain mental toughness, how you become the person you want to be, is constantly facing the things that you don't want to face. If you constantly run away from things that you don't want to face, how is there growth? But if you're never putting yourself in a situation, you're never going to grow. A warrior is not a person that carries a gun. The biggest war you ever go through is right between your own ears. It's in your mind. We're all going through a war in our mind, and we have to callous our mind to fight that war and to win that war.
Need motivation?
Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because I need it. I need it for me because I don't wake up every day and say, yes, let's go conquer the world. No, I wake up and I need that external motivation to match my internal motivation. When I see somebody who's doing amazing things, it makes me just want to play a bigger game. And so I hope that today's video makes you want to play a bigger game too, because your message matters, and let's get it out to the world. So today, let's learn from one of the best, David Goggins, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2 is use the 40% rule.
Mine is so powerful, and I didn't realize it. I went through 3 hell weeks, Ranger School, Delta Force selection, all this stuff. This incident I'm going to explain to you right now is where I realized we are only at 40% of what we are capable of. Here I am, right idea to do this race called Badwater 135. I Googled the 10 hardest races in the world. What came up? Crazy race in Death Valley. Summertime, 135 miles. I knew nothing about ultra running. I thought you would camp out, run 20 miles, then one day, then run 20 miles again until you got 135 miles. I had no idea what I was doing. Called the race director up. He's like, hey, have you run 100 miles? I was like, what, in a week or what? What are you talking about? He's like, no, in 24 hours or less. I said, no. He goes, you got to qualify to get in this race. You have to run 100 miles in 24 hours or less. He was trying to call my bluff. I call him up on a Wednesday. He goes, hey, there's a race in San Diego on Saturday, where it's a 24-hour race where you run around, a track, a 1-mile track for 24 hours. And if you get 100 miles, I will consider you in my race. It really helps to be smart, people. And I was not smart in this situation. I said, I did the math. It's about a 14-something minute mile. I can do that. Anyway, I show up on Saturday with the blue lawn chair, Ritz Crackers Mileplex, and my ex-wife. And every mile I'm going to see her, I'm going to grab some Ritz Crackers and some Mileplex. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but it's bliss. That whole ignorance is bliss thing. So I get to 70 miles pretty damn fast. I get to 70 miles in like 12, 13 hours. What do you think happens to your body when you haven't trained for that kind of mileage? A lot of bad things, but I thought I was in good shape. It was amazing. So I hadn't gone to the bathroom at all. I sit down, big mistake. I sit down in this blue lawn chair. I sit down, looking at my ex-wife. I'm seeing like 3 or 4 of her. I'm like, this is not good. So I'm trying to play it off because I know where I'm about to go. So I'm sitting there, and when you haven't gone to the bathroom, you're dehydrated, your nutrition's all jacked up. You sit down, you gotta go to the bathroom now. So I look at my ex-wife and go, do you love me? She said, yes. Why? I go, because I'm gonna take a shit on myself right now. Because I can't stand up because my blood pressure's all messed up. So I'm sitting there literally pooping up my back and peeing blood down my leg. She's a nurse, so she's concerned. And I'm telling you right now, there's one thing you never want to hear as a black person. She said, you're starting to turn white. So I'm sitting there and I'm all jacked up. And I'm like, okay, how in the world am I I got 30 miles to go. I should quit, but I didn't. What I started doing through this whole process was I started to study myself in the dark times. So instead of just quitting real fast, I said, no, I'm going to quit, but not right now. So I sat back for a second and I said, let me get some water, let me hydrate, let me clean myself up a little bit, let me get some nutrition. I wasn't dizzy. It's okay. My feet are all messed up. Let me see if I can walk. I'm gonna walk 1 mile and then I'll go home. That'd be a great accomplishment for me, 71 miles. So I took this massive thing and I started breaking it down into small chunks. And as I started breaking it down into small chunks, I started realizing maybe I'll walk 1 more mile. But at the pace I was walking, I wasn't gonna make the time. So this is when I realized the whole 40% rule. Those of you who worry, red can't hurt me, you understand it. Basically, the 40% rule is when we have a governor on our brains, like a governor on a car. A car may say 130, but if you put a governor on a car, it can only go 101. We do the same thing to our brains. I was born with limited horizons, born on the other side of the tracks. I didn't think I could be anybody. So my governor was myself. So once you take that governor off, you have limitless horizons.
Rule number 3 is face your fears.
I was in the Air Force for about 4 years, and my big thing was I wanted to be Air Force pararescueman, some of the best medics on the planet Earth. As I got in the program, I started realizing that they had this thing called water confidence. Basically, they make you very uncomfortable underwater. So I realized at that point in time that I hated being underwater. I hated holding my breath. For 6 weeks, I hung in the program. I didn't sleep at all for fear of going back to the pool, for fear of drowning in my head. About 6 weeks in, we have this physical, and they realize I have sickle cell trait. Back in the day, I used to lie about whatever made me feel insecure. On my official paperwork out of pararescue training, it has David Goggins left on a medical. But the truth of the matter is, I left because I quit. I had to find a different job in the Air Force. In 4 years being in the Air Force, I gained 125 pounds. I get out of the Air Force and I'm working for a job spraying for cockroaches. 40 restaurants I was in charge of. I go in there at nighttime and I spray. I would stop at Steak and Shake, get a large chocolate milkshake. I would go across the street to 7-Eleven, get a box of mini donuts. On the way home, I'd be popping donuts like Tic Tacs. I would get home, turn the TV on. This is my routine. Start taking a shower and listen to the TV as I'm showering. This particular day, I started hearing Navy SEALs, toughest training. And I was hearing it cut out between the water hitting my ears. So I came out of the shower. At the end of the show, this commanding officer gives a speech. He says, we live in a society where mediocrity is often rewarded. These 22 men detest mediocrity. I invented this thing called the accountability mirror when I was growing up. And I got a chance to go into that mirror and look at myself and call myself out. I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that. Being raw and real about who I am and about what I'm hiding from. And so to overcome all this, my bright idea was to try to become the one thing I was afraid of.
Rule number 4 is create a morning routine.
What does a morning look like for you at the moment? Have you got a routine of some kind?
Yes, I run every single morning. So that's
what time are you up? When are you waking up?
I'm up about 5:30. So every morning starts with a run. And that's because that's the one thing I hate to do more than anything in the world. So that's like my cup of coffee. And I'm all about armoring yourself. So the second you leave your house and the second you open your phone, the second you do any of that, you are now letting in poison and cancer. So I make sure a lot of things you can't avoid. So as I get up, I start to armor plate my mind and body. Like a person's going to war, you put your body armor on. That's what I'm doing on that run. I'm waking up and I'm giving myself all this armor. So when I come out in the world, Now, look at that phone. I'm ready. I'm not waking up late. I'm not rushing around. I'm not disorganized because I know I'm going to get hit in the fucking mouth. There's an art to getting hit in the fucking mouth. And that is why these things are important. You have to wake up and you have to give yourself belief. You have to give yourself confidence. So it starts with that run. So after the run, I come home, I eat something small.
How long's the run typically at the moment?
Nowhere under 12 miles. So 12 miles is the minimum.
And what are you getting that done in? How long?
It depends. Right now I'm running heart rate. So I'm doing like 8:15s, 8:30s because I'm retraining right now. Because
what's that? Is that zone 2 for you?
Zone 2.
Yep.
Because of the leg surgery I had. So I'm going back, starting from scratch. So anywhere from about 1:30 to 2 hours, I run every day.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5 is practice positive self-talk.
How did the negative voice lead you to the weight gain and kind of keep you in the sewer, as you say?
So the most important conversation you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. Mm-hmm. You wake up with it, you walk around with it, eventually you'll act on it. Mm-hmm. And my self-talk was the most disgusting self-talk of all time. Mm. So the sewer of my mind, like I said, you have to go back in there and fix things. A lot of us are afraid. Like right now, 20 years ago, you wouldn't find me on this show. I was too embarrassed to tell you I stuttered, I lied, all these different things, getting beat up, getting bullied, whatever happened. But that's where the true transformation starts to happen. When you can look at people, anybody, thousands of people, one person, and say, hey, this is who I am. And this is where I have to fix myself. And this is where it really happened. I thought it happened when I was in, 19, 18 years old trying to pass this military test. Right. It happened here when I was almost 300 pounds, spraying for cockroaches, making $1,000 a month. And, people called me dumb. My dad called me so many things, not even funny. Being beat just stripped me of all self-esteem. This is when I realized I was alone on this earth. Yeah. I have God but alone on this earth, and I have to fix everything. So this is where I started to develop an indestructible mental toolbox. A lot of us run away from our fears. Sure. And we box ourselves in to a lifestyle of this is all we can do. Right. 'Cause I'm afraid of everything outside this box. Yeah. So I'm comfortable inside this box. I jumped the box.
Oh, you did, yeah.
For the first time in my life. Mentally, I jumped the box and said, hey, I got to come out here and play.
Rule number 6 is don't fear failure.
I'm the only person in Navy SEAL history to be in 3 Hell Weeks in 1 year. Hell Week is 130 hours of continuous training. I got into Hell Week, got double pneumonia, stress fractures, got rolled back to day 1, week 1. I broke my kneecap. So I reported back to day 1 of Navy SEAL training broken. And we had a guy die in my 3rd Hell Week. So Hell Week ended about 30 hours early. I had severe stress fractures. My knee is now blown up again. I knew I wasn't gonna get a chance to go back through Hell Week again. I made a decision to myself, there's no more quitting. So that's when I went and got duct tape. For the first 45 minutes, the duct tape hurt like hell. But after 45 minutes, my legs would go numb. Once stuff goes numb, you can't feel it. So that's how I went through the rest of 22 more weeks of Navy SEAL training. I was already at rock bottom my whole life. So when you know how rock bottom feels, you don't mind sleeping in the sewer. So at that point, once I realized that I already experienced the bottom, I no longer had fear of failure. But this took a long time. It's one like I woke up and, oh, eureka, I got it. And I started realizing that the mind is the most powerful weapon that we have. Once I was able to quiet my mind and realize that I was really not cursed, but blessed to have so many tools that I never saw as tools. While growing up, so much hardship. Only thing that can happen to me now is this victory.
Rule number 7 is be limitless.
I Googled this race called the Hurt 100. It's a 100-mile run in Hawaii with 25,000 feet of climbing. Only 27 people had ever completed this race. I didn't know any of these stats. Ignorance is bliss. I show up there with compression tape on because my feet are jacked up, severely bad. And I show up, I finish the race, barely, call Chris Kosman up, get my application in just in time. He says, "You're an idiot. I cannot believe you went out to that race and did it." I get into the bad water. He says, they select the top 90 athletes in the world. I got fifth my first year, came back, got third, ran 7,000 miles in 2007 to raise over $2 million for Special Operations Warrior Foundation. And thank you. Since then, I'm getting inducted into the International Sports Hall of Fame in March. I've done so many things. I got the VFW Americanism Award. I beat Lance Armstrong out in 2008 for the world's fittest man. I'm not on steroids, but he said he wasn't either, so who knows? And just to leave y'all with this, I didn't get deep into the weeds because I didn't have much time up here. But I did everything I talked to you all about with a hole in my heart the size of a dime. So I didn't get deep about how sick I was through Hell Week, through Ranger School, through all these races I did. I thought it was just normal to be that jacked up. I ran 205 miles in 39 hours. You're supposed to be jacked up, but not as bad as I was. Basically, everything I talked about, my heart, so you know how you have the good blood and the bad blood, oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. My good blood was getting mixed in my bad blood, so I was working off about 60% of my capability. These doctors, when they found it in 2009, when I damn near died. Because when you're in your 30s and you have a hole in your heart, that's not real good, especially doing what I was doing. I'm not even supposed to be in the military. So I snuck by, thank God, or maybe not, who knows. But long story short, people, is that a whole bunch of these scientists and doctors came out to study me. I was like a lab rat. How did you do what you did? And one doc, they couldn't find anything genetically gifted about me, like was something just compensating for something else. How did you do this? One doctor sat back and said, "This guy figured out all the tools of the mind." And I take a lot of pride in that. We all have a lot more ability than we think we have. And it's up to us to find it.
Rule number 8 is stay calm.
Everything I had gone through, I realized that the human mind, if you can put it in a very quiet, calm place and get it to calm down and not be so spastic, that you could possibly make this work out for you. How bad are you really? So I calmed myself down and I had to make this enormous thing small. I had 30 more miles to run and my body was in the worst shape in my entire life, the worst pain I ever felt in my life. So I broke this 30 miles thing down. I broke it down to small chunks. I calmed my mind down. I had to get water, had to get potassium, had to get sodium. I had to stop being so dizzy because I had to be able to stand up. So my dizziness went away after about an hour. I was able to stand up now. And I was going around this track at like a 30-some minute mile. And I'll never get my crew person saying, "Hey, I got to mile 81. They said, you're not gonna make the time." I had 24 hours and I was going so slow, taking so much time. This is when I realized that the human mind, once everything gets connected, once the mind knows you're not gonna quit something, it's gonna try to find more. It's gonna try to give you more. Once it realizes you're not gonna take the path of least resistance, you're gonna stay here until it's done. My mind and my body and my spirit became one for the first time ever. For the first time ever, it became one. And I went to a level that I never thought was humanly possible for myself or anybody else. In that shape that I was in, I was able to run 19 miles. And I ran 19 miles, did 100 miles, actually did one more mile. I did 101 miles in 18 hours and 56 minutes. I'd overcome so many obstacles in my life, and this was the final crucible for me. And I got through it. And at the end of this race was such clarity to me. And it was just the most amazing thing I ever do in my life.
Rule number 9 is be confident.
You have to remind yourself, we all have a story. All of us have gone through very hard times. Mm-hmm. But when we're in a hard time, our mind has a way of forgetting what all we've overcome. I have a way of taking 1 second when I want to quit and saying, okay, you endured this. So I look at my life and how I came up as the ultimate training ground versus most people look at it as why? Woe is me. God, why?
Right, exactly.
Why?
Right.
I had to flip this upside down and say, hang on a second. God was training me to be one of the baddest men on the planet Earth.
Absolutely right.
That's how this was my journey.
Do you begin to realize in this moment how mentally strong you are?
Yes, because those things beat me.
Sure.
But they didn't kill me.
No, not
and
at
I
all.
was able to work around them and figure
right.
out ways through it. So when I was in the worst time of my life in Hell Week, I looked at everybody and said, I'm the most trained person here.
Yeah, well, that's the truth.
I've gone through more mental torture than any of you all can even fathom.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the baddest people on the planet. I'm looking at them like this. You guys can't hold a stick. So I started looking at verses like, I don't belong here, versus like, I might be the baddest person to ever come here.
Wow.
Who could have pulled this off? Who could have been given a sewer to live in their mind and say, okay, at birth, I'm going to put you in the worst place on the planet Earth and let me see if you can go to the top of the mountain.
Right.
With nothing.
Right.
But just hard work, grit, and figuring it out and not putting yourself back in the dungeon every time something got hard. So that's what became my daily voice was, you really are the baddest person on the planet.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is don't give up.
Belief is something, it's not, I can't tell you, oh, believe in yourself. That's a bunch of crap. Belief came from me, was going through those Hell Weeks, taping those legs up, getting up early in the morning by myself, no coach, getting myself up, motivating myself every single day. When I'm out there in 240-mile runs and I don't want to be out there and I'm 90 miles into it and I have 150 miles to go and no one's there saying, come on, David, I'm forming belief. Many people form belief in many different ways. For me, this is how I do it. So when those hard times come my way, I know exactly how to get through them. When I first I self-published my book, Can't Hurt Me. No one believed in me. I believed in myself. I sold almost 5 million copies of that. Now Never Finished just case is coming out December 6th. Never Finished, I guarantee you, the audio book will probably go down as probably one of the best audio books. It sounds cocky as hell of all time. It's truly amazing what we put into that book because of how I've lived my life. A lot of people come up here and speak about motivation and pushing yourself. And they're not doing it. They're not waking up every single day. They have a canned speech they go off and they tell you about what to do, how to do it. Wake up every morning, make your bed, take a cold shower, all that crap. I'm telling you right now, you have to be that person that leads from the front. Many of you out here are in leadership positions. And many of our leaders right now are not leading from the front. They're leading from the rear, but they're telling you how to do it. They're waking up late. They're not doing what they say. So in life, it's real important to do what you say because that's where true knowledge comes from. And when I was going through Navy SEAL training, there's one thing I told myself. I wanted to quit every single day. But many dreams die while suffering. And many of us out here have suffered. And when you're suffering, I'm not talking about just physically. I'm talking about emotionally, spiritually. It could be a relationship. When you're suffering, you give up on the very things that you wanted the most. When I was going through pararescue, I wanted to be a pararescueman so bad. But that water haunted me. So when the suffering got too much, my dream died. And pretty much I almost died with it. If I didn't find Navy SEALs and getting past that hump and overcoming my demons and facing my demons every day, I would have never been up here today. You can't outrun your demons. They'll always know where you're hiding. Trust me at that. And I'm going to end with this. Don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done.
I read your book and you've overcome a lot from your upbringing. So my question is, when you stop blaming your dad, and maybe not forgave, but when you stop giving him the power away for why you were the way you were, what did that do for you as a person and as a father?
Well, it did a lot for me as a person. It did a lot for me as a person, as a man, as everything. So once you realize where you come from, so I went back and I faced that. I faced my father, and by facing my father, it allowed me to realize, because as you're growing up, you may look at your dad or your mom or whoever it may be as like they're not human or they're just evil. No, they are human, and they also came from maybe a bad childhood. So I was able to really go through and really dissect my father. And by me dissecting my father, I got a lot of answers on why I was so weak, why I was so pathetic, why I didn't want to go be better. But that said, though, my father's demons had to go somewhere. So they went to me and my brother, and they went to a lot of other people. You have to realize that you have to now solve for your demons and solve for his for you to move on. So when you get that kind of strength, when you're able to look at these demons eye to eye and say, I'm not going anywhere, I'm going to face you every single day, what happens is you start to callous that mind. You start to realize that all the bad things you went through, it doesn't matter anymore. I know where I'm going and I'm focused on getting there. So it just starts to, and once you stop caring about what people think about you, and once you stop caring about where you came from, if it was a bad place, you become very, very dangerous, very dangerous. I talk about theorists, I talk about practitioners. A theorist is a person who reads a book, doesn't do it, reads a book, learns about something, and then talks about it. A practitioner is myself. A practitioner is a person like me. I wanted to be an expert in the mind, a mental toughness guy, beyond mental toughness. The only way to do that, in my eyes, is to put yourself in hell. Put it in hell repeatedly. Repeatedly put yourself in hell and study how you process it. And that's how I was able to come up with all these different ways, all these different tools to slow the mind down in hell. Because the mind just speeds up. The mind wants to get out of the painful situation, the suffering. It can't process it. So that's what I realized by going through all these different processes of being in hell weeks. Is just that.
I love that, man.
How
That's
the mind
amazing.
processes in hell.
What was the greatest lesson your mom taught you growing up?
She doesn't know how much she taught me because she wasn't much in the teaching mode. My dad took her soul. But what I did as a young kid is I observed everybody. I wasn't really smart in the books, but I was real smart when it came to life. And I was able to sit back and watch her mistakes. I was able to see how she struggled through life and how I don't want to struggle through life. The biggest thing she did for me, when I would bust my ass, when I would fail, when I was at the bottom of the sewer, she never picked me up. She never gave me that cookie and said, hey son, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
She didn't have time for that. Sometimes she gets upset when I talk about my past because it paints her out to be the best mom. If I had any kind of mom in that kind of environment, I would have never made it. Because she forced me for whatever reason to, you better figure this out or you're gonna be a statistic. And this is something that she didn't sit down and tell me. I realized this. This is the world that is in front of me. And what most people do is they see this world and they look at it as an excuse to get out of it. I have all these valuable lessons because if you look out in the world right now today, it's not a nice place, but I'm very prepared for it. I'm prepared for it. I'm prepared for all the failure coming my way. I'm prepared for everything my way. And that's the biggest lesson that she taught me by not teaching me, by never saying it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, she told me the exact opposite. Life sucks. That's what she knew. And it was the truth. I gained about 50 pounds back. I was about 250 pounds. This is a story about the mind. I'll go through it real quick. So I didn't put running shoes on for about 9 months, 10 months. I was overseas deploying, came back with the free fall school. I was at military free fall school with Morgan Luttrell, Marcus Luttrell's twin brother. We got the news that an incident happened where everybody died and they couldn't find Marcus Luttrell. So I got the call. My job was to tell Morgan Luttrell, his twin brother, who was also a Navy SEAL, that his brother might be dead. 4 days later, they found Marcus Luttrell alive. What I did was I went online, Googled, different events This event came up called the Badwater 135, 135-mile race through Death Valley in the summertime. I didn't know that was even humanly possible to run that far. I thought it was a stage race. I thought you'd like put your shoes on, ran 15 miles, set up a barbecue, camped out, and then did it again the next day. It was a 48-hour race. I went out there and basically to raise money for the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. So I called this guy up named Chris Kosman. Chris Kosman was the race director. He said to me, basically, you have to run 100 miles in 24 hours or less to qualify. I never run past 20 miles in my entire life, and up until now, I probably ran 20 miles this entire year. So he says, I call him up on a Wednesday. He says, you know what, there's a race on Saturday. And if you run 100 miles in 24 hours, I will consider you in my race. So I wasn't real smart growing up, and obviously I wasn't real smart right now. So I did the math like less than a 15-minute mile. So I said, you know what, I can walk this. Dumbest decision I made in my entire life. Went out there about 250 pounds, and I get to mile 50. It's in San Diego, November. So on a 1-mile track. Where you go as many times as you can around 1-mile track for 24 hours. I get to mile 50 in about 12, 13 hours. I sit down. I sit in this blue lawn chair. I saw my ex-wife every single mile. I got Ritz crackers and Mileplex with my nutrition. I was a musclehead, so I drank a lot of Mileplex back then. So basically, here I am drinking Mileplex, Ritz crackers. By mile 70, I haven't gone to the bathroom one time. No water. That Mileplex tastes like hell, and the Ritz cracker is a ball in my mouth. This is where I really realized that. So I'm already a Navy SEAL. This is when I realized that we only use 40% of our mind. This is when I started going crazy with mindset and being a scientist of the mind. We go, I'm at mile 70, I look at my ex-wife, when you sit down and I have to go in the bathroom for 12 hours, what must you do? Go to the bathroom. So I sit down and I look at her, it's the farthest I've ever gone in my entire life. 7 miles, I'm happy, I'm feeling good. And I can't get up to go to the bathroom. It's literally from me to end the stage. So I look at her and I said, honey, do you love me? She goes, why? I go, because I can't stand up. My blood pressure's all messed up. I go, I'm taking a shit on myself right now. So I went back on my back and I started peeing blood down my leg. And my ex-wife's like, oh my God, you got to stop. This is when I realized throughout my whole life, all the bad times, all the good times, you know what? I'm not going to quit yet. Let me get better. Let me fix my blood pressure. Let me get some potassium, sodium, nutrition in my body. Let me see if I can fix myself. So I said, if I can just walk 1 more mile after being in the worst shape of my entire life, this would change everything for me mentally going forward. From this kid who came from dirt and nothing, who couldn't read until he was a junior in high school and is now here. I walked a mile. I said, maybe I can walk 1 more mile. Maybe I can walk another mile. At mile 81, my ex-wife looked at me and said, you're not going to make the time. When your mind knows it's not going to quit, and this is what I found out. This is my 40% rule. When your mind knows it's not going to quit, your body will adapt to whatever is in front of it. I ended up running 20 more miles. I did 101 miles in 19 hours and 6 minutes. And that one day changed, 19 hours. It wasn't SEAL training, it wasn't Ranger School, it wasn't Delta Force, it wasn't any of that crap I went through. It was this 19 hours and 6 minutes that forever changed my life to know that we as human beings are capable of anything. And we don't need any special kind of parents or tools to get there.
Let me ask you something. What does it mean to you to be referred to as the toughest guy in the world and to be called the gold standard and extraordinary and superhuman and all of these different descriptions of you that make it sound like you're a one-off, that it's almost unattainable, what you've done with your life? What does that mean to you in terms of your message?
I mean, I guess the whole hardest man in the world thing, that, you can call it what you want, but that title came from where I came from. And, it's like, I had limited horizons. So if you were to have 1 million people in a room and you had all of their resumes, like from the age of 1 to the age of 20, you would never pick me being where I am now. And that's where the hardest man in the world came from was, how many people can come from where this man started to where he is now? So it wasn't really so much about, all the physical feats, going through, still training 3 times and Ranger School and all these things I've done that helped give me that title. But the biggest reason I got that title was because when I realized, I was the fallback plan, I just refused to give up. And the thing about that, Chris, is I figured this out. Most of us are only 1 to 10% away from greatness. But we think we're so far away from it that we never try. And once I started going down this journey, I started realizing that, and those percents started to add up. And before I knew it, my mind started hardening, and I started passing so many different people that I thought were so far above me. And then before I knew it, man, I became uncommon amongst the uncommon. Belief is something, I can't tell you, believe in yourself. That's a bunch of crap. Belief came from me, was going through those hell weeks, taping those legs up, getting up early in the morning by myself, no coach, getting myself up, motivating myself every single day. When I'm out there in 240-mile runs and I don't want to be out there and I'm 90 miles into it and I have 150 miles to go and no one's there saying, come on, David, I'm forming belief. Many people form belief in many different ways. For me, this is how I do it. So when those hard times come my way, I know exactly how to get through them. When I I self-published my book, Can't Hurt Me. No one believed in me. I believed in myself. I sold almost 5 million copies of that. Now Never Finished just came, it's coming out December 6th. Never Finished, I guarantee you, the audio book will probably go down as probably one of the best audio books. It sounds cocky as hell of all time. It's truly amazing what we put into that book because of how I've lived my life. A lot of people come up here and speak about motivation and pushing yourself, and they're not doing it. They're not waking up every single day. They have a canned speech they go off and they tell you about what to do, how to do it. Wake up every morning, make your bed, take a cold shower, all that crap. I'm telling you right now, you have to be that person that leads from the front. Many of you out here are in leadership positions. And many of our leaders right now are not leading from the front. They're leading from the rear, but they're telling you how to do it. They're waking up late. They're not doing what they say. So in life, it's real important to do what you say because that's where true knowledge comes from. And when I was going through Navy SEAL training, there's one thing I told myself. I wanted to quit every single day. But many dreams die while suffering. And many of us out here have suffered. And when you're suffering, I'm not talking about just physically. I'm talking about emotionally, spiritually. It could be a relationship. When you're suffering, you give up on the very things that you wanted the most. When I was going through pararescue, I wanted to be a pararescueman so bad. But that water haunted me. So when the suffering got too much, my dream died. And pretty much I almost died with it. If I didn't find Navy SEALs and getting past that hump and overcoming my demons and facing my demons every day, I would have never been up here today. You can't outrun your demons. They'll always know where you're hiding. Trust me at that. And I'm gonna end with this. Don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done. If you read It Can't Hurt Me, I go into detail about my first 100-mile race. The race I wasn't trained for at all. And I went out there and ran 100 miles on a 1-mile track. When I got to mile 70 and everything went south. I mean, it went south. I've been through 3 hell weeks, Ranger School, some of the world's hardest training in the world, and this was the most pain I've been in my entire life. When I sat down in that chair and went to the bathroom myself and everything went south, when I had 30 miles to go and I was in the worst shape of my life, and I won't get too deep into it, but when I was able to go 30 more miles in the worst shape of my life, that's when I talk about it in the, You Can't Hurt Me, the whole mental governor got removed. And that's when I realized that a human being is able to do some of the most, horrific things out there. We are built very different. Like a lot of us, we're taught everything, how to read, how to write, how to drive a car, how to cook, how to clean. But very few of us are taught how to survive when the rug gets pulled from underneath us and we have to find more. Very few of us are taught how to fight. And at that moment, that 30 miles was about 10 years of life that I lived in 30 miles. And I learned how to fight in the hardest of times, in the worst shape of my life. I started this crazy stretch routine, and I literally have healed myself through the discipline I had. And what people won't believe is I got to a point where I stretched out for 8 to 12 hours a day.
So essentially, like most of your waking hours when you're not working out.
Stretching.
Yeah.
And it went from that to 6 hours a day. Then from 6 hours a day to 4 hours a day, the more I would open up. So the hips
and
are your soul.
Is there like a specific routine of stretches that you would go through? Or
I would sit and stretch a whole big routine, a whole mess of like opening up your abductors, because your abductors are attached to your hips, your hip flexors, everything is attached at this region here, your midsection, your hips. And my hips got so tight that I couldn't even squat down. I had so much back pain. So that's why, another reason why I started running. Running, you stay upright. I couldn't squat anymore. I couldn't do any of that powerlifting stuff. So the only thing I can do is run. Running didn't bother me too bad. And it got to the point where I couldn't run either. And my health got real poor. Then my spine was collapsed. And I got real sick. And basically, I healed myself. No doctor can find out what's wrong with me. So I couldn't run a lot. I couldn't do any activities. So I said, you know what? I'm going to bury myself in stretching. And what happened was I had this huge knot on the back of my head. The knot came from my spine collapsing and getting tighter and tighter and tighter. It developed fluid or whatever. Long story short, as I started stretching out, that bump started going away. And the smaller the bump got, the healthier I got. And I was like, what in the world is going on? So I shave every day. So I would feel this bump. And the bump, and you can see it right now.
Yeah. No, I can see it. Yeah.
Most people think everybody's a bump in the back of the head. My bump was like this big. Mm-hmm. It was huge. And the more I stretched, the more it went away. The more it went away, the healthier I got. I was like, man, so I'd be like, I'm going to keep on stretching. So my stretching it was crazy. And I got healthier. And I was like, my God. So I stretched more and more and more. And now I've been doing it now for 3 years. I haven't missed a day of stretching in 3 years. Well, some of you read that I think about when it's hot outside, that it's sunny and 70. Well, it's not today. It's the reality. It's about 90 degrees and 100% humidity. But who gives a shit? That being said, September 3rd, I have to have my book turned in. And what I realized, I'm reading this book a lot, but I realized I wasn't born this. I made them. At the bottom of insecurities, fear, self-doubt, lies, was me buried in the fetal position. How I got out of that was recognizing it, being honest with it, being truthful with it, and then fixing it. We like to live on social media with lies about ourselves, how great we are. Get to the source and fix the problem.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Eric Thomas, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
They looked at the most successful men and women of the world, and they found that they had like 7, 8 things in common. And one of the things they all had in common was a routine. They are obsessed with their routine. They don't have a gap of wasted time in their routine. You know, I realized